folks, how's it going? So violas, today we're working on the excerpt of Bourree, and so this is actually only 8 measures plus a pickup, but it is repeated, so it becomes 16 measures. And one great thing that you should do is you should play it with a metronome at different speeds. So the first thing I did for you was to play it at 115. I'm going to slow way down now, play it at 85. And that's going to just be really a nice tempo to iron out all of the kinks and to make sure that it's really smooth and in tune. And that would repeat, of course, so it's 16 total bars, but it's the same thing 2 times. So for time's sake, just played it 1 time. Now I'm going to play it at 100, which is 15 beats slower than what you'll play it for your audition. So you just heard that song at 3 different tempos, and I really recommend not doing just those 3, but slower, faster, anywhere in between, and that's really going to help you out. In addition to that, there's a few things that I want to hit that are going to really make sure that you're set up for success with this one. The first thing that you should do is go through and play long tones. And so long tones are just holding out the pitch, making sure it's really in tune. In order to make sure they're in tune, you gotta make sure you have the right notes, the right key signature. So our version is in C major, different than the violin version, which means we don't have any sharps. So on the A string, we've got our 1-2 finger pattern, and on our D string, we have our 1-2 finger pattern. We just go down to the G string for a C. What does change is when we have the 8th note run, we have to make sure that we have F sharp. So then we switch, and it has F sharp and G touching the 2-3 finger pattern. And the reason is because that F sharp becomes a secondary leading tone. We actually change keys and we end the little excerpt in G, and the F sharp becomes scale degree 7, a half step away from scale degree 1 G, and that's how we change keys in this piece. So let me demonstrate what I mean by just holding out each note. I'm looking for the most in tune I can get. And one way I could do that is play with open strings. The first note of the piece, G, I have an open G string, so I can play it with that G too. Should really match up. If it's off, should be able to tell, especially if you play it with that open G. But even those non-open string notes that don't share a note name with the open strings, you can still play. They should still sound decent with the open G string. There's our G. That sounds really nice. If it's out of tune, hopefully you can hear it. A little sharp, a little bit flat. So you want to spend the time and listening for that resonance with the G string. You can use a tuner as well, and that would really help you. Next note, F. That one is going to clash a little bit. But you can still tell it's in tune, especially if you play it out of tune by comparison. Should really scream out at you, out of tune. Next note, E. Now we have a C string that I can play with. You might have noticed I actually was a little flat on that C, but I immediately fixed it. If you play out of tune, just fix it if you hear it. Rather than just staying with the accidental mistake you made, fix that note, make sure it's in tune. So the second line there, that's where we add that F sharp. So make sure that you change your finger pattern. If I was gonna do long notes for that second line, it starts on E, F sharp, and G. A little flat. You can compare F sharp to A, or F sharp to G. It's going to sound a little out of tune. All right, so that first thing was to play long tones and to make sure that you're playing really in tune, adjust the intonation if you hear it's off. The second thing is going to be go measure by measure and make sure you have the right rhythm and the right notes. One easy thing to do, just compare it to what I played at the beginning of this video. But that first measure, for example, with the pickup should sound simply like this. You'd be surprised the music that we play, in school. Somehow people get wrong conceptions of how the rhythm goes. They make up something that's similar. You want to make sure you're playing exactly what's on that page. So if I played, that's really similar, but it's not quite right. I played 2/8 notes first, and it's just a quarter note. Or for example, that's a lovely song, but it's not what's on the page. So make sure you're playing exactly the rhythm that's on the page. One kind of tricky rhythm is that rhythm in the second measure, where you have the half note, and it should be down up. So you can also use that half note to crescendo like it asks you to, and that should sound like this. So you have that long note on beat 2, a little unexpected because beat 2 is typically a weak beat and you don't necessarily expect a long note to be carrying through a weak beat. All right, those were the first two things. The third thing to work on, the 8th note run, really kind of tricky in this piece and one of the things that we're looking for to be really smooth. So what you want to do is just go note by note to make sure you have all of those notes. This is where we have that F sharp, remember, so make sure that F sharp comes through. And with that, what you'll want to do to make sure it's just as smooth as that was is to take 4 notes at a time, change up the rhythm a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the first 4 notes and we're going to play long, short, long, short, long. And then I'll go to the second 4 notes and try that one. Then the third 4 notes. And then the last 4 notes. Next. 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 After you go long, short, long, I would reverse it and play short, long, short, long. Next 4 notes. Next 4 notes. The next thing you'll want to do with this is take 4 notes at a time and play 1 long, the other 3 short. So for example, I'm going to start off with the first note long. Second note long. Third note long. And the last note long. If you do this, if you take the first 2 methods and that third method, then you're going to be able to artificially slow down and speed up different parts of the rhythm, and that should help it get smooth. While you do that, you want to make sure that you're playing with the metronome, because as much as we think we can stay steady, we're not as steady as the metronome. It's always going to be very exact. The last thing to work on is the dynamics. You got to add those dynamics in. And adding the dynamics in to the eighth note part is kind of tricky. It's all in the right hand. The left hand controls intonation, the right hand controls tone, dynamics, articulation. Eventually it should sound like this with the dynamics. And in order to get that through, I just need to take the right hand, take the left hand notes out of it, just take the right hand, and think about WASP. Think about weight, angle, speed, and placement. We want to do a crescendo. So with my bow, I'm going to be adding some weight, adding some speed, bringing in the bow closer to the bridge, and that should help out a lot with the dynamics. Just take 4 notes at a time, for example. If those 4 notes that you take are not crescendoing, then you won't be able to do it with 16. So here's 4. Again. Continuing to get louder. So if you can pull off the dynamic change with just a few notes, then you should be able to apply it to all of them. Adding in the notes. That is what we need to break down in order to add that effective dynamic change there. And adding a bit of a decrescendo in the last 3 notes helps. So those are the 4 things. The first thing, long tones. Play all of the notes just long, loud, in tune. Check it with the tuner, check it with open strings. The second thing, make sure measure by measure you know what that rhythm is and know how it's supposed to sound. You can go back and watch me play it in order to help you with that. The third thing is eighth note run. You want to make sure that's smooth. You do have to break it down with the metronome, add some different rhythms to those eighth notes, make it a little exercise. And the last thing for this is to add in the dynamics. Add in those dynamics. Make sure that it's beautiful and effective. You're adding the crescendos. They're all written in there, but think about how WASP is going to help you do that. All right, thanks, folks.